It would help if I unmuted the mic. Welcome into the Dakota Drive. Another Monday here to talk some sports. And things have gotten really interesting really fast today. Just in the last 15 or 20 minutes, the Minnesota Vikings and head coach Kevin O'Connell have announced that J.J. McCarthy suffered an ankle sprain last night, and the Vikings lost to the Falcons on Sunday Night Football, and the Vikings aren't anticipating having J.J. McCarthy at quarterback for next week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, what does that mean? Carson Wentz, the Bismarck guy, probably going to step under center this week and get the start for the Vikings. So that's going to be something to watch and something that we're going to be talking a lot about around here. That's for sure. Again, J.J. McCarthy probably going to be out for Sunday's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a noon game, so no primetime game or anything like that. And on the other side, Joe Burrow got injured yesterday. They're talking about he could miss months. So it's going to be Jake Browning playing quarterback for the Bengals on the other side. So you're going to have two backup quarterbacks playing against each other Sunday afternoon at 12. One of those is going to probably be Carson Wentz, the Bismarck guy, getting a chance to step into the spotlight once again. And then the interesting thing after that is the Bengals have two overseas games where they're traveling overseas. They'll play against the Steelers and the Browns back-to-back. So things just got a lot more interesting for Minnesota after that loss at home last night on Sunday Night Football. As a unbiased journalist and Georgia native, that game was very hard to watch, just across the board. Football-wise, 5 field goals for the Falcons, and the kicker they just brought in this week who doesn't even know half his teammates' names. A funny story, but just kind of an insane game. Felt like the Falcons left a lot of points out there in the first half. The Vikings just could not stop the pass rush. As someone who's watched a lot of Falcons football, I've never seen Falcons football look like that in terms of getting, 5 or 6 sacks in the first half. It's the most they've had in a half since like 2008 or 2009. Just a crazy game, and one that you felt like Minnesota really should have had a pretty good chance to win coming in, to lose it and then find out the next day that J.J. McCarthy is going to be out. That's obviously going to be an uphill battle for the Vikings as they move forward. Well, speaking of the Vikings, something else we've talked a lot about around here is the 100 years of Dickinson State football. This year, the 100th year in the program's history, and one thing that, really stands out, I don't think it's unusual for guys to play college football and go on to be football coaches. Nature of the beast, right? There's going to be guys that do that. But, when you talk about Dickinson State football, they've had 2 head coaches in a large span of time between Pete Stanton and Hank Bijou. So they've nurtured a lot of relationships, and they've gotten a lot of guys into the world of coaching. And I think it's pretty cool for Dickinson State to say that they have a guy that's coaching at the NFL level. Dalmin Gibson is an assistant special teams coach for the Minnesota Vikings, and I had a chance to catch up with him. This was prior to last night's game, so we talked a little bit about the Week 1 things and the Week 1 win. But I just thought it was a good chance to catch up with him, especially around this time where there's a lot of talk about the Vikings and a lot of hype around them, and to pair that with our coverage of Dickinson State and what they've accomplished as a program going into their 100th year, or now into their 100th year of program history. And so we got a chance to chat a little bit late last week, and we're going to play that interview for you now. The other interviews that we typically do on the show are live, but just with the practice schedules and that kind of thing, the only way we could pull this off was to do it earlier in the week. So here's Dalmin Gibson, former Dickinson State player and coach, and he's worked his way up the ladder and has now landed as an assistant special teams coach with the Minnesota Vikings. All right, we're joined now by Dalmin Gibson from the Minnesota Vikings and former Dickinson State alum. When I say that, what does that mean to you, man? That you have really scratched and clawed and worked your way up to come from a place like Dickinson State and end up in a place like Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the people at Dickinson State, helping me get to this point in my career. Without those guys, I definitely wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. what have the last couple of years been like for you, being in Minneapolis, getting to experience something at such a high level where I'm sure everything feels so much different?
Yeah, I think obviously the pressure involved with what an NFL season is and what's at stake each and every single week. But you get into the groove of the in season and the off season, and then kind of what it should look like in terms of how you've got to prepare your players each and every single week to go out there and put them in position to perform at their best each and every single Sunday.
Yeah, what's that adjustment like whenever you go from experiencing the college game and that kind of thing? I mean, is it a little bit of a culture shock as your life adjusts, or how different is it?
It's not as big of a shock as you would think it would be, just because at the end of the day, this is now their job. So they've got a little bit more skin in the game to, listen to what you're coaching them and teaching them to do. But at the end of the day, everybody and all the players, they're passionate about the game and they want to do well and exceed and play at a high level. So it's maybe a little bit easier to coach these guys than people would think.
Yeah. So you go to Dickinson State and then you jump right into your coaching career. And now to be in a place like Minneapolis and still be up here in the Midwest, would you have ever expected that that's where life would have taken its turns?
Yeah, never in a million years. To be able to be 8 hours from my hometown in South Dakota and 8 hours from my wife's in Dickinson is huge. So being able to have that support and being able to get home, it's been great. So hopefully I only ever work for the Minnesota Vikings from here on out. We'll see how that goes, though.
Yeah. Take me back to those early days of coaching under Pete and that kind of thing. What things do you still take with you that were most important from those early days that you still utilize on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just kind of the work ethic and just the gritty, style of play that, as a player at Dickinson, that was instilled in me early on. And then even as a coach, some of those very same values were, in us as well as coaches. So to be able to learn it the right way early on is just, one of those things that's easy to take with you no matter where you're at.
Yeah. How proud are you of being from the background that you are, and knowing that you're a Dakota's guy, and you brought your career up through those ways of going through Dickinson State and that kind of thing?
Yeah, honestly, I think that's my winning edge. Knowing that at the end of the day, there's not going to be people that have some of the experiences that I've had, and they're not going to match me from a work ethic standpoint. So that automatically gives me a leg up on, from my perspective, any other coach that wants my job, he's not going to be able to get it because I'm going to outwork him. So yeah, it's gone a long ways, and just to be able to have that mindset I feel has really helped me throughout the years.
Yeah. On a day-to-day basis, or I guess I shouldn't say day-to-day, but week-to-week basis, are you still keeping up with the Blue Hawks as much as you can?
Yeah, as much as you can. It's anymore they're playing all over the place, back in the Frontier and out west and all those things. But being able to reach out to Pete and check a score here and there is usually kind of a weekly thing for me. And that's really with anywhere that I've coached and played at in the past. Just trying to check in on those guys, see how they're doing.
Yeah, I saw that Pete got a chance to go out there and see you practice and that kind of thing not super long ago. How much do you still rely on that connection and go back to him and have conversations and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's been great, to be able to, hit up Pete and, he'll ask me a question about this and I'll be able to ask him about that, and to kind of go back and forth as coaches, because everybody's always bouncing ideas off of each other. So, it was fun to sit there and be at practice with Pete, and we're talking about what we were doing at practice, and our wives are standing there looking at us here they go again, just talking ball, trying to, scheme things up, that type of thing.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, special teams for the Vikings was a big topic in week one. You guys had some pivotal plays that special teams were a game changer. How cool is that for you to know, hey, this isn't just, this isn't just the third leg that people don't think about. Like we take this seriously, and it's impacting the game in a big way, especially here in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's huge and it's super rewarding, obviously, but it's hats off to our personnel, department getting us the players, number one. But then, KO does an unbelievable job of incorporating and emphasizing the kicking game in this organization. So the expectations are definitely there. So to be able to not mess it up as a coach and just let the players play and know that this is a player's game and let them be the dominant pivotal forces for the matchups on that phase of the game is just huge, and just letting them go and do the work. So,
and I want to ask, in that week 1 game, everybody, that video has kind of gone viral of KOC waving out the returner. How big of a situation was that? Is that a situational thing where on Thursday walkthrough or Wednesday walkthrough, that's something you're talking about, and how much does that just kind of show the preparation paying off for you guys?
It's really a hats off to, our coaching staff, our situational game management coordinator and KO, because as that drive was happening and I think the Bears were getting into field goal range, KO came to me and said, hey, if they score here and we have to return this ball, we need to bring it out of the end zone. And, I said, okay, make a note of that. I look at the clock, they end up scoring, and we get to the huddle and, tell the returners, like, hey, we're going to bring this out no matter what, because in today's new dynamic kickoff, whenever there's a ball in the end zone, the data and the analytics tell you to take a knee, but this was an outlier situation. So we're in the huddle and we tell the returners, like, hey, bring this ball all the way out. And sure enough, the play happens, and you see Ty Chandler looking over at the sideline, and everybody's waving him over so we could get the clock running, and he comes off the field and he's like, I didn't think you guys were serious about me bringing that out. That was 8 deep. So, heads up play by him, heads up job by our staff to be able to be on top of that to bleed some clock.
Obviously, just since you've gotten into the NFL, the new kickoff rules have changed now a couple of times. When any kind of change like that happens across the league, how much does that change your job, and how much more extra homework does that add on the front end in the off season and training camp, that kind of thing?
Yeah, the off season is huge, studying everything and looking at all the schemes and the data and figuring out, what this play really was, because last year even nobody really had this play figured out on kickoff return until maybe week 8 or 9. So going through all the film and seeing kind of what worked, and then obviously the rule changes happen, and you still are, putting an emphasis on it in your in-season and out-of-season installs. But once you actually see it this last preseason, like how it was actually going to work out, because the kickers are putting the ball on the ground a lot more than they were the year before. So making those subtle little adjustments, it's been huge, but it's definitely good for the game. And even though it takes a little bit longer to watch a game now because you've got 12 extra plays and people aren't just kicking it out of the end zone, it's been great for the players and coaches alike.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think it's been awesome. It's been really cool to see. Well, just last thing, we're talking about this 100-year history of Dickinson State football, and one of the things that got pointed out to me is just, I don't think it's unusual for, a program to have a bunch of guys go on and coach, but, obviously there's only been 2 coaches in a big span of years there at Dickinson State, and having that consistency. And just from those 2, the number was thrown out that they've produced over 150 coaches at different levels. But for you to be the one to represent Dickinson State at this level, how much pride do you take in that? And do you take the time to reminisce on that and say, hey, I can be proud of myself for putting in the work to get here?
Absolutely. I take it means the world to me just to be able to be in that fraternity of coaches and to come out of, that group of guys. But I think the number one reason why there's, so many great coaches that have come out of that program are, the coaches that we had, the Coach B's, the Coach Hoffman, Coach Leno, Coach Stanton, obviously. So to have just unbelievable role models that do it the right way, will light a fire under a player just to be able to see somebody do it the right way, so to be able to be a part of that has been fantastic. But then any chance I can get to, reach out or reminisce or see some of those guys. Like, I was back in town for hot camp and happened to go to the coach's social and saw, a guy like Jamie Walker, who I played with, who's now coaching. So to see some of those guys that I haven't seen, that I played with a long time ago, that are now coaching at the high school level, is cool. And, people may have think that I've changed just because I'm at the NFL, but I'm still Dalmin Gibson. I'm happy to see all these guys and still came from that part of the world, and I'm just grateful to be in this opportunity right now.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time today, man. Thanks so much for taking time to chat with us, and awesome to see what you're doing out there in Minnesota. So keep up the hard work, and we appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you, Luke.
All right, thanks, man. Have a good one. And Dalmin Gibson and the Minnesota Vikings assistant special teams coach. I think we might have picked that up in the middle there, but we appreciate Dalmin taking the time to talk to us. Late last week, we weren't able to do it live, so we had to pre-record it. But Dalmin was gracious to give us some of his time, and just such a cool story there. I mean, he goes to Dickinson State, starts out his coaching career there, and hops around, does, kind of the typical coaching thing, and has a few stops before eventually landing a spot on the Minnesota Vikings. And obviously, he talked about the fact that he is super happy there and excited about what they have going there. In case you missed it off the top, the Minnesota Vikings just announcing less than a half hour ago that J.J. McCarthy is likely going to be out for next week's game as the Vikings host the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals already down their quarterback after yesterday afternoon, Joe Burrow going down with an injury. Now on the other side, J.J. McCarthy dealing with an apparent ankle sprain, according to head coach Kevin O'Connell. So that means that Carson Wentz, the Bismarck man, is going to likely step in under center for the Vikings next week, and then we'll see what happens after that. You got to see how long that an injury like an ankle sprain lingers around for your quarterback. Obviously, you never know how long those kind of things are going to last, but it's going to give Carson Wentz a chance to see what he can do with the Vikings and see what he can do with a lot of weapons, which is obviously huge because, he had a chance to play with some pretty good weapons in Kansas City, but, now to get a chance to do it and, with the team that he grew up rooting for and that kind of thing, it's going to be a lot of cool storylines going into Sunday at 12 o'clock. So Dalmin Gibson was our first guest. Our next two guests are going to join us live. The next one being Kadie Walls, the Linton HMB volleyball coach. Linton HMB ranked number 1 in the state in the first polls of the season. We were going to have Kadie on here on Labor Day, and things just didn't work out. And so we decided to circle back to that one because I feel like they're a team that deserves to be talked about. Obviously, we mentioned number 1 in the state, so that's big in itself. But I think they're going to be doing some pretty good things there. We're going to take a quick look back at a couple of things from the weekend. Something else cool I just saw that I was going to share. I was at the North Dakota State game on Saturday. Ben and I went down to Fargo for the NDSU game, and obviously a big win over Southeast Missouri State. Cole Payton, another phenomenal job, and I think these numbers speak for it. Well, first off, the number on Saturday was he threw for 348 yards, the first quarterback to go over 300 since Trey Lance did it in 2019, and it's a number that Carson Wentz never threw for, Cam Miller never threw for, Easton Stick never threw for, talking about 348, so just a huge number from Cole Payton. And then I saw this from Sam Herder of Hero Sports. Through 3 weeks, NDSU's Cole Payton as PFF's highest-graded quarterback in all of FCS and FBS, featuring the number 1 overall grade and the number 1 passing grade. Now, again, all of FCS and FBS. That's pretty big. He's 39 for 55 for 706 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. On top of that, he's rushed the ball 27 times for 170 yards and 1 touchdown, a 214.7 pass efficiency. Those are big numbers, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. But at the same time, we've seen who North Dakota State has played against in the Citadel and Tennessee State and Southeast Missouri State. This week they get a bye. They'll get a chance to regroup. Tim Polasek mentioned on Saturday that rest was obviously going to be huge, but also just getting away from the football facility. He emphasized that. He said this weekend they're going to be out recruiting, so the coaches will be away from the football facility. That'll give the players a chance to be away and just kind of regroup. And it's early in the season, but I do think it's a good chance to hit the reset button before you go into conference play and you host a South Dakota team who has kind of been on the decline this year. They're kind of in a weird spot, but it'll give NDSU a chance to regroup and kind of fine-tune some things. If you missed it last night, Sunday night, we talked about Logan Conklin. That was a guy that he's from Minot. He went to Minot High School, and he was a great football player. He was a great basketball player at Minot High, and Tim Polasek had some pretty big praise for him after the game on Saturday. So we talked about him last night. If you missed that, you can find it online. But he was saying that Logan has done a good job of carving out a role for himself because of his pass blocking or run blocking ability. But they've got to find ways to get him more involved in the passing game so that every time he runs out of the field, it doesn't show defenses like, hey, they're running the ball. So Logan Conklin, always interesting to see those local guys doing something at the next level. Jackson Dutenheffer from Mandan had a big sack in the third quarter against Southeast Missouri State this past weekend, so that was big as well. On the flip side of things, coming out of Grand Forks, UND goes on the road and plays a really tough Montana team, 5th-ranked Montana. UND was 16th going in. They're 16th still after the loss, so I think that says a lot about the confidence that people have in UND's program, that voters have in UND's program. I didn't get a chance to watch a whole lot of the game, to be honest. I kind of had to watch the highlights afterwards and that kind of thing. But, Jerry Kaminsky putting up some pretty good numbers again. Montana is obviously a super tough place to play, and I think there were some opportunities that once again UND just dropped, and kind of gave away some opportunities. And I know that was a theme in Week 1 against Kansas State, and I think it kind of popped up again a few times in this game. So we'll see how UND regroups and comes back into things here in the next couple of weeks as obviously conference play gets started across the board for teams. But just such a fun weekend of college football. But we're going to switch gears now, and we're going to hop into talking about some high school volleyball. And I'm getting things pulled up here. High school volleyball season ramping up. This past week was the first chance that we've had to see the rankings for high school volleyball teams, and the first chance we've had to see rankings for volleyball teams with the 3-class system, which is something that's obviously new. And it changed the rankings a little bit this year. We're only, the NDA PSSA is who I'm referring to when I say we, but only voting for the top 5 in each class for the polls every week, which makes it harder, honestly, than having that top 10 that we used to vote for in the Class B ranks. Class A, or the highest division's always been 5 teams, but for Class B teams, now you're only voting for 5 teams. For Class A and AA, the same thing. Makes it a little bit harder to determine who belongs to be in there, and obviously it's so early in the season. There's going to be tons more polls that come through between now and then. Probably 8 to 10 polls that come through before we actually get to tournament time in the postseason. But Linton H&B, a team that's made a statement for itself early on. I believe when the rankings dropped last week, they were 12-1 on the season. So they've gotten off to a hot start. They won the Northern Cast tournament the weekend before before this past weekend. So they've gotten off to a good start. And head coach Katie Walls is a couple years into running that program there as well, which I think is a big thing for Linton H&B. And we're going to get Katie to join us here in just a second as I pull things up. All right. Gotta love technology. We're working with what we got here. There we go. All right, cool. All right, Kadie Walls, Linton H&B's head volleyball coach. Kadie, how are you today? How's life treating you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I know we tried to get you on Labor Day, and you were just having such a great Labor Day. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But thank you for circling back with us. We appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of exciting stuff going on in Linton right now. I mean, it's been a long time since things haven't been exciting for Linton H&B volleyball. But how are things going in your eyes in terms of the early portion of the season? I mean, your team's ranked number 1 in the state. But how are things going for you guys, and how happy have you been with the start of the season?
Things have been going well. Obviously, coming out with a number 1 ranking, it's pretty good to hear, but I'm more impressed with just the progress we've made week in after week out, and just really improving game after game. We've had a couple of injuries come here and there, which it's okay. Get some of our younger girls an opportunity to perform and come out and show us what they can do. And I've been pretty impressed with our team top to bottom. Like, even when I have younger girls have to step in, they've played like their varsity returner. So I got to be happy with the level of competition that we have in practice and at games. So I'm feeling pretty good right now, although I know that we can't get complacent right now. We got to keep the work up the whole time. But I feel like we're sitting at a good spot where we want to be right now.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned the number 1 ranking. We were just talking about that. For you guys, I mean, I know it's not an unfamiliar spot to be in. How do you handle that as a coach? I mean, do girls even know about it without you mentioning it? How do you guys handle kind of that mentality?
That's a good question. So it is pretty 50-50 split. Like, some of them have no idea, and some of them are like, "Coach, did you see? Did you see?" So it's good to talk about. I always feel like we got to talk about it. Otherwise, it's just the elephant in the room sitting with us. But I think that it's important to know that that's where we're at, because I think every team that we play knows it, and they're coming and they give us the best game, I feel like, most of the time, which is good. So we want to see teams at their best all the time, and I think it makes us just that much better. So I think it's better to talk about it, get it out on the table, and then let's say, okay, how can we now defend this every single day? Because people are going to be coming at us pretty hard. We're going to get everyone's best game. So then how do we respond to that? So I think it's good that we get comfortable playing with that weight on our shoulders even early throughout the season.
Yeah. A couple of weekends now ago, I guess, you guys did really well at the Northern Cast tournament. When you go to a tournament like that, what do you take away besides, being happy with coming out with a win? What do you take away from getting a chance to see so many teams from different parts of the state and be able to gauge kind of where your girls are at this point?
Yeah, it's awesome to see our varsity team compete against other varsity teams, because at that point in the year, we had just played our JV team, and obviously you feel pretty good about it when you're just playing your JV team. So it's good to see what we need to improve while we're playing at that pace, where we're playing at a varsity pace, and we can see, okay, yeah, we still aren't moving fast enough on this transition. So seeing the things that we need to work at that speed, and then also just like seeing rotations that we kind of get stuck in. Okay, where do we need to improve at a little bit more? Or it looks okay, but let's fine tune our hitting in this rotation. So just seeing where we are against other teams, and I like the Northern Cast tournament and the Central Cast tournament, because you're starting off with the best of the best right away, and it really throws you into the fire to see what you're made of. So I think it shows our girls a good level of competition right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about last season and how that has, Has that sparked your team at all this year? You play against a really good Medina team that I think you guys had some pretty good matches across the board against them last year, right? I mean, you end up playing them, what, 3 or 4 times in the season by the time it's all said and done, and they end up winning the Region 3 title. So what do you feel like your girls have still carried away from that experience from last season? I mean, has it left a bad taste in their mouth that it's still something you talk about, or how much do you reference it as a coach?
I feel like this summer we definitely talked about it because we're like, all right, let's get this out of the way with. And I've talked about it less at the beginning of this season. I mentioned it still every now and then, or if we're not working hard enough, hey, reminder, this is what our goal is at the end of the season. But I think something that describes it perfectly is this summer we were at team camp in Jamestown, went to University of Jamestown's camp, and John Hagerly was watching my girls play, and he goes, wow, this team looks hungry. Like, and they do. They have come back with a vengeance, and they definitely lit a fire under them. So they're working hard every day in practice in ways that I didn't see last year. And so I think it's awesome, and what it's done for our gym is awesome. And we just got to keep it going throughout the season. So they're definitely motivated because they know what it feels like to have it be right there and not come up and win the game that you needed to win. So it's a good motivator.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask, I mean, you only have 2 seniors on your roster, which seems kind of crazy. I mean, I know it's Class B volleyball and a Class B school, but still, I mean, 2 seniors doesn't seem like a whole lot. So how important have those 2 seniors been for your roster, and how much does it also, excite you as a coach knowing what the future looks like for you guys?
It's awesome. And I think my seniors deserve a huge credit because the leaders that they have been this year, I don't think we're where we are at this point without them being there, because it's almost like having 2 extra coaches on the court. There's times where I know I would like to call a timeout, but I see them gather in our team in the huddle and they say, okay, I can read their lips and I can see what they're saying. And so I'm like, okay, I don't need to call a timeout because I have those extra captains on the floor for me, giving the message that I would give in that moment. So it helps me as a coach knowing that I have them to do that. And then even throughout drills and everything, like, they hold everyone accountable because they know what it looks like to be at the level that they want to be at. So my seniors have been phenomenal. And then just having a junior heavy class and then a lot of contributing sophomores and a lot of freshmen that are just pushing our varsity in practice, I think it's really developed our program and it's made us better as a whole. Like in the gym when I walk in, like, the level of competition from our C squad all the way up to our varsity is pretty high. And I think that's a lot of it due to our senior leadership and just the standard and the precedents that they have set. So it's really awesome right now having them.
I wanted to ask you just about a couple of your girls. Brooklyn Schumacher is, I would say arguably one of the better players in Class B volleyball in the state. Is that one of those girls that you look to kind of help lead this team? And just what has she meant to you as a coach?
Yeah, she's been awesome. So it's awesome always to have a girl like Brooklyn on your side. And when you need a big point, like, I look at my setter and I say, hey, find Brooklyn right now, because she'll know how to put the ball away. And actually this year I moved her from the middle to the outside. And so she is getting a lot more sets. And I think that's been phenomenal for our team. She just has all those more opportunities to touch the ball. And she knows how to put it away in big moments. So as a coach, I couldn't ask for anything more. So it makes my job a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I just briefly saw this, so forgive me if I get her name wrong. Maddie, did she just reach 1,000 assists or something like? Yeah,
I believe she's at 1,038 maybe now. So as a junior, that's a pretty impressive stat, and she also likes to have Brooklyn there to dish the ball too. So I'd be willing to bet a lot of those 1,000 are to Brooklyn. So yeah, she does a phenomenal job, and she's our only setter this year, so we're running a 5-1, and so she does a good job running around and getting the balls to all of our big hitters in the moment. So yeah, for sure, very lucky to have a good setter like Maddie.
And obviously she's played a lot of volleyball up to this point. I mean, what does it mean to have a junior of that caliber that has played that many minutes and has spent that much time on the court? And this year is obviously going to be more of the same with only having one setter. What is that? What kind of value do you find in that as a coach?
I think it's incredibly invaluable. Like I think the way I'm able to coach her during the set, just because I've had that relationship with her previously, and I've coached her for many years, so I know, hey, I need to be a little harder on her now, or maybe she knows that she messed up, so I don't need to be as tough on her. So it's nice to have that line of communication open between you and your setter all game, and I can know, okay, hey, this hitter's doing well right now, or maybe she's struggling a little bit, so I need to tell her to set this hitter. So having that captain out there where now I don't need to tell her as much, and she just knows because she's responded to the game, and she's played it now a lot. So I just think it's helped our hitters incredibly, especially to have only one setter that they're hitting off of, so they get that little consistency throughout the game. So I'm really looking forward to this year for Maddie. I think she's just going to continue to have a great year.
And I wanted to ask you, I don't know right now how much it impacts you guys, but I wanted to ask you in the grand scheme of things, as someone who is around the sport in North Dakota and that kind of thing, how have you kind of seen the three-class system change things for teams? Even if it hasn't directly impacted you guys a ton, how do you think it is changing the landscape of what we're going to see over the next few years?
I really think it's going to change things. Like, I think we'll get a better look when we see our state tournament a little bit more, just to see what kind of teams that you can add to the mix. Like, already looking at our region, we have a lot of really competitive teams in our region. And so it would be nice to get more teams from our region at the state tournament, because I think that we have a tough region, so I think they deserve to be there. But it's nice also to look within classes and at tournaments, so you can kind of get a feel of where everyone's at, just class to class, so you can kind of see the differences between all the different classes. But so far I haven't noticed a ton of differences other than schedule wise, but I think towards the end of the year I'll see a little bit more. I feel like still I'm reminding myself, wait, is that team class A or class B? So when I'm looking at scores, so it's first year navigating is a little different.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm still trying to remind myself of who's Class A and Class B now. You mentioned obviously you would like to see other teams from more teams from your region get a chance to go to the state tournament. How do you think? I guess you've been able to see it in basketball and that kind of thing. How do you think those play-in games at the end of the year are going to kind of change? Do you think they'll change the approach to a region tournament and that kind of thing, knowing that teams have another chance to get into state?
It might change the approach slightly. I think teams might still play the region tournament, just go ahead and try to win that region championship as much as possible. But I definitely think it adds another layer to definitely have that play-in game. I think last year, if I look at my team, it would have been nice to have the play-in game. It gives us a second opportunity. But I still think like the best way is maybe winning the region championship, and you just know you have a solid way into the state tournament for sure. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how people kind of scheme a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And those games are happening like the Saturday right after Dakota Bowl, so that's going to be interesting. So you will play a region championship on Thursday. If you lose, you'll play again on Saturday for a chance to go to the state tournament the following week. So it's been cool to see that in basketball. I'm interested to see how it rolls over into volleyball. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions, 4 or 5 rapid fire questions. Just the first thing that comes to mind. For anyone listening who doesn't know, Kadie is married to Curtis Walls, who is the Linton HMB football coach, which is a lot of fun. So that's where some of these questions are going to originate. That's your one little cheat getting into this. But first thing that comes to mind, are you, when you're a fan in the stands at a volleyball game, are you more vocal than what Curtis is as a fan? Who's more vocal as a fan of the other team?
I think he's probably more vocal. Maybe. I don't know.
So you just keep to yourself in the stands then?
Yeah, I'm more of a quiet observer, I feel. Maybe I'm wrong.
What's harder for you, losing a volleyball game or seeing him lose a football game?
I think me losing a volleyball game. I would like to say seeing him lose, but I think I have a harder time with me losing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited was he after Friday night's win over another ranked team?
So 10, 10, 10. If it could be 11, then 11. I think I'm probably more excited when he wins than he is. So I think
That's
to your
funny.
last question.
We got the video of him running up to the team huddle afterwards, and that was my favorite thing that I saw on Friday night. Who is the number one team outside of Linton HMB to watch in Region 3 this year?
I think between Edgeley or Medina. I think they're both looking pretty good right now.
Okay, so Medina had their first state tournament trip last year, which was huge for them, obviously winning the Region 3 tournament, and Edgeley's always competitive, so that's a good answer. Cool. That's all I've got. That was the hard-hitting rapid-fire questions that everyone sticks around to listen to. But super excited for you guys. It's going to be a fun season, I'm sure. I appreciate you coming on and joining and talking to us for a few minutes today, Kadie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Kadie Walls, head coach of the Linton HMB volleyball team. Again, they are ranked number 1 in the state right now. Linton HMB volleyball, they've obviously went through that stretch where they won a couple of state titles and hoping to get back to that place once again. It looks like our third guest is... Our third guest isn't going to be able to join us today. That's all right. Hope McGelkey, the goalie for the U.S. women's national sled hockey team. She has a really cool story. We talked about it a little bit last week. She went with the U.S. women's national team and won a gold medal in the first ever World Para Women's Hockey Championship. They won a gold medal over in Slovakia, and she's... having some car issues, so she is not in a spot where she can talk right now, but that's all right. We will get back with her, and let's just talk a little bit more. There was a couple more things that I wanted to talk about in terms of this past week and looking forward to this weekend. The number one thing that is, and it feels like beating a drum, just beating the same drum over and over again, because we've talked about them every week so far, but Legacy football, man, they have been impressive. They got down early against top-ranked Fargo Davies at home. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So first, the game's supposed to start at 6:30. You have lightning in the area. The game gets pushed back. I think it probably didn't start until about 7:15. 7:10 maybe, and Legacy gets down early. I think there was one point, I don't remember if it was the first quarter or the second quarter. It was definitely the first half. They had, a bad snap exchange. They had a couple of holding penalties, and they had like 2nd and 45 or 3rd and 45. And when you see a team get in a position like that, it's kind of like, wow, like these guys, I mean, that's literally the definition of back against the wall. And Legacy was in that position this past weekend, and they found a way to fight back into it. I think it was 21-20 at the half. Found a way to fight back into it, and it was just an impressive game for them. Yusuf Jama broke the single game rushing record for the Sabres for their high school. He went, I don't have the exact number in front of me. I think it was like 242 yards, 245 yards, somewhere around there. Broke the single game rushing record. And I said pregame, if Legacy's going to win this game, I think they got to be able to run the ball really well. And Yusuf Jama obviously answered the call, a guy that we've talked a lot about. Brody Weigel looked really good at quarterback. At one point in the second quarter, there was a Legacy was going into Davies territory, and I mean, they had pieced together a pretty good drive, but they just had a couple of bad plays back to back. And I think they had like a little screen set up to the right side of the field, and Brody Weigel threw it, and it just wasn't a great ball. They didn't connect on it, and the ball hits the ground. It's incomplete, and I saw Coach Clem on the sideline just say, Brody, take a breath. And I thought it was kind of a cool moment to see, because I think it was something that all those guys needed in the moment, and I think this week we found out just how much poise this Legacy team has, and they're going to keep getting, people's best, especially now that the rankings are going to come out here in an hour, little over an hour, and obviously Legacy is likely going to be the number one team in the state. This week they host West Fargo Horace, another team who has been impressive this season, obviously making the jump from AA to AAA. Legacy will get a chance to host the Horace Hawks this week, so that'll be another big game for them. Another game I'll be looking at this week is two teams that are coming off a loss. Bismarck's got to go on the road and play at Fargo Davies. What's that going to look like? How are those two teams going to respond to their first loss of the season? Davies was the previously ranked number one team before they lost to Legacy this past weekend. Bismarck had some turnover trouble. I think they've had some turnover trouble in the first couple of games of the year, and it just kind of came back at them again in this game this past weekend and ultimately ended up falling to Shanley. Century is going to be back home. They're going to be taking on West Fargo. Century got a big win on the road this past weekend, 17-13, I believe, over Cheyenne. So Century trying to kind of claw their way back into things. That's going to be an interesting game to watch. Looking back at last Friday, it was so weird because obviously we mentioned the Legacy game got postponed. They didn't get a chance to start until later on. There were a lot of games because of the weather that we had that got a chance to start, but then they got postponed in the middle of them. And so there were some games, some teams on Saturday that came back and, made the same trip that they made on Friday night, made the trip again on Saturday just to finish out games. And then the same instance happened to Dickinson Trinity and Killdeer. That game will be finished tonight. Dickinson Trinity and Killdeer, they're in a 1-point game in the third quarter is where they're going to resume things tonight. That's a big game. Dickinson Trinity ranked, Killdeer doing really well in the region. That could ultimately be a game that has some huge region implications, could ultimately decide a home game in the playoffs. And staying in that Class A region, Killdeer's obviously going to play this little less than half of a ball game tonight, and then you kind of get into a short week, and Trinity's going to be in the same position. You get into a short week, and then you got to turn around and play again. Trinity's actually going to have a shorter week because they have to play on Thursday. They're hosting Heart River. Then on Friday, Killdeer is going to be on the road at Shiloh, so they get a decently long road trip for them, and it's going to be a short turnaround for both of those teams. So no matter what happens tonight, it's going to be interesting how those teams turn around on a short week and get prepared for another new team. The Coal Bowl happening, Hazen and Beulah, that's always a fun one where you can kind of toss out the record books. This is kind of rivalry week in this Class A 9-man area. Hazen and Beulah, obviously the Coal Bowl, they play for a trophy every year. New Salem and Grant County Flasher, that's kind of a de facto rivalry game. Those two teams didn't play last year, if I remember correctly, so they're kind of renewing the rivalry. And then the other one I wanted to talk about is Southern McLean and Central McLean will be going head-to-head, and that's going to be some fun storylines going into that one. Southern McLean is maybe most, I don't want to say most surprising team to everyone, but probably most surprising team to a lot of people in Class A. They're off to their best start since 2005. They have just come out of the gates and they have looked phenomenal. And the thing is they beat Carrington in week 1, a team that was receiving votes or they were ranked, and Southern McLean scored 14 points in the first half, and that's all they had to score. They didn't score at all in the second half. Since then, they've had a couple more big wins, and then this past Friday night, they were on the road at Shiloh. They end up winning that game 16-3. I think it was 8-3 when I got there just after halftime. They end up winning 16-3, and they've got a really good running back, Ethan Rederath, who kind of just chips away back there. It's the old 3 to 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and that's kind of what this Southern McLean team is made of. And this week they'll get a chance to play Central McLean, who has just one loss on the year, and it was a close loss to Dickinson Trinity, 35-26. Central McLean is going to travel down to take on Southern McLean. That game going to be in Washburn this Friday night. And this is an interesting matchup because those two communities are so close. When you talk about Wilton Wing and you talk about Turtle Lake, Mercer, McCluskey, the teams that make up Central McLean, and Central McLean is up to Class 11 Single A this year for the first time. They had previously been in 9-man for quite a while, so these teams kind of doing something new this year, and as part of that, they're going to be playing for a trophy this year as well, just like Hazen and Beulah do in the Coal Bowl, just like New Salem and Grant County Flasher have done in the past. So that's going to be fun. We're going to have some more on that later this week on KFYR. I believe Thursday night is probably when we're going to talk about that a little bit more and get a chance to talk to those teams. So excited to share that one as well. But Southern McLean, Central McLean, that's going to be a game that's circled on the calendar for sure. And then Linton H&B, we just talked about them. They went on the road and they beat Grant County Flasher in a game where Linton was ranked number 3, Grant County Flasher was ranked number 5 in the state, and Linton H&B pulled away in the second half, gets a win on the road. It was Grant County Flasher's first home game of the year, and that was a win that could ultimately end up deciding who the region champ is in this region, depending on how things shake out. Now, with that being said, Linton H&B has a tough test ahead of them this week as well. They got to go on the road to take on Napoleon Gackle Streeter. That's a team that Grant County Flasher kind of struggled with. And, Jamie Krenz told us they hung around for a little bit on us. And, that's not something that we felt like we could put them away. We had chances to put them away, and we just weren't able to do that. So we'll see what kind of fight Napoleon puts up this week against a very good Linton team, a team that is getting a ton of respect across the state. Some other things to look out for this week. We mentioned some unique things with Trinity playing football on Thursday. UMary Hockey opens its season on Thursday, opens its home season on Thursday. That'll be interesting to watch. They get a chance to play Lake Region. It's always so interesting this time of year. You get to end of September and we start talking about hockey, and it's like, man, it's September. But that's the way it is. And even cooler, Friday night, the Bobcats have their home opener against Austin. That's going to be so much fun. The Robertson Cup going to be in the house. The Bobcats going to do a ton of big things in terms of, a new banner and all that kind of stuff. So they get that first home series. That'll be a Friday and Saturday series. Should be fun to see how that goes for the Bobcats. I believe they have one player returning on this year's teams. There's going to be so many new faces. It's going to be a completely different team, which I think makes it makes it really intriguing, makes it really exciting, and it's going to be fun to see where the Bobcats stand after losing so much with that Robertson Cup championship from last season. WDA Golf getting one tournament today, another tournament tomorrow, back-to-back tournaments kind of setting up for state, which is coming up in 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting to see how things shape up there. UMary Soccer at home for the first time on Friday. They play against Mankato. Finally getting a chance to see them, a team that is picked right there kind of in the middle of the pack in the NSIC, but I think they have the potential to prove some people wrong, and then they'll be at home again on Sunday. Dickinson State football getting a chance to come back home on Saturday. They'll play against Carroll College. Dickinson State, again, they had that Thursday night game against Valley City State, then they had a bye, and now they get a chance to play Carroll College this weekend. UND back at home again on the football field. We'll see how they rebound from that heartbreaking loss to Montana. And then we mentioned the Vikings. The Vikings last night just couldn't put it together. They had plenty of chances. The Falcons gave them plenty of opportunities. And then you find out the news today that J.J. McCarthy has a sprained ankle and likely will not be playing at all on Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. So that means that Carson Wentz, the Century High School graduate, will step in, former North Dakota State quarterback. And Adam Schefter now reporting This is from a tweet just less than 45 minutes ago. Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy expected to be sidelined 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. So that means that Carson Wentz could potentially be looking at starting those 2 games that are going to be overseas in Ireland, I believe, against the Steelers and against the Browns. That'll be the 2 weeks after this one, so September 28th and October 5th. So that could make things interesting as the Vikings get deeper into their season. We mentioned that it'll be another backup quarterback on the other side this week against the Bengals and Jake Browning. What does Carson Wentz look like in this kind of setting with some big weapons on offense? Should be fun to see how that plays out for the Vikings. Should be fun to see how it plays out for Carson. Now he's getting a chance to start for the team that he grew up rooting for. So obviously a lot of eyes in Bismarck and in our area going to be talking about that one. I'm sure Jay Dillon and Wayne Wolf and company will be talking about that on the football forecast later this week right here on KFYR Plus. We appreciate you joining us for another edition of the Dakota Drive. We're excited about continuing to get things jumping here on the Dakota Drive and continuing to bring in some great guests and continuing to elevate this over the course of the next weeks and months as we kind of recap what happened over the weekend and jump into a new week ahead and get a chance to have some deeper conversations with some people that we hope you get a chance to know on a better level by getting them here on the Dakota Drive. But thanks for watching another edition of the Dakota Drive. I'm Luke Gamble, KFYR Sports Director. We hope to see you back here next week, same time, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central, right here on KFYR Plus. Have a good day.